This is a place where I will share my creative adventures with you. We will talk about knitting and crafting, gardening and cooking, food preservation and building projects, and so much more. If this sounds good to you, let's get right to this week's creative adventures together. Hi there. Today's episode is all about the kitchen, celebrating all the fun I have in the kitchen. I start with a special recipe all the way from Romania. It is Zucasca. Sorry. I start with some pictures of the ingredients that I'm going to need for it, and then I do a little funny clip of a video that I sent to Christy's sisters in Romania. It's a really traditional dish of ways that people would have stored their fresh vegetables for the winter. Almost anything can go in it. Apparently, it's sort of like stew. You make it however you want it, and you call it that. And then we finish up with a picture of me having it the next day on toast. It is absolutely delicious. Here we go. Hello, sisters. I have my eggplant knife. I have my eggplant that's been roasted and seeded, or not seeded, peeled, and I'm gonna chop. I've always wanted to have my own cooking show. Am I doing okay? Christy said I shouldn't chop it like that. He said I should chop it straight up and down. But he's not here, so I'm gonna chop it the way I want to chop it. He said it should look like paste, like that. No big chunks, but just kind of paste. Well, maybe I'll take those back. Anyways, this is what's going on in my big cooker. Thanks for watching my cooking show. Bye. Making that Zucasca was a big project. It took a lot of steps, but it was absolutely easy to do and turned out to be completely delicious. The next project we're working on is beef pies. I'm going to tell you some funny things about how we store butter and the volume and weight of butter, and I get all my numbers wrong, so forgive me for all the errors I'm about to tell you about the weight of butter. Just go with it. Here we go. So I really wish I had a better mechanism for holding my camera while I'm going to work on this. I don't yet. I will though. But I wanted to show you, I've taken the flour and butter and salt and sugar out of the food processor, and I've put it in a bowl because I'm going to add my water and vodka mixture. It's half water, half vodka, and there's ice in there. This is easier to do by hand than with the pulsing mechanism on the food processor. So I will just do that by hand. And we are looking for it to just come together. I am not kneading this. I just want it to squeeze together and keep its shape. It's almost there. I know it still looks really floury, but
once I start squeezing these bigger pieces down, they will stick. Okay, that's good. Maybe a little bit more, but not much. So here's the little life hack I have for you. Years ago, we had a family member who would go through a lot of butter, and it was getting expensive to go through so much butter. And so we always buy our butter in the 2-pound block. And when I get it home, I cut it into quarters, like into sticks like you would get in the US, or if you buy the fancy butter here. And I would just re-wrap them up in the tin foil that they came in the one stick. And then I would get a piece of parchment and I would fold each other's stick in its own parchment. And then they all just go in a bag in the freezer. And as we need half a pound of butter, 1 stick comes out. You need a pound, 2 sticks come out. And when I'm done with the parchment, this goes right back into the bag of butter, even though it's empty, because I can reuse this 100 times. It's just been used for frozen butter. And then this I don't need to save to reuse for wrapping butter, but of course it's got all this buttery goodness on it, so of course we will use it to grease our muffin tins or cake pans. So this also goes back into the freezer, but just into a different spot, so we know where it is when we're making. Cool tip, eh? So this is the last of the potatoes from our garden. I have peeled them, and there's only a few of them, so I'm just gonna take my knife and chop them up. I actually really like using my knife. I know the other day I showed you this like slap chopper I have. That's great on bulk cooking days, but I've actually taken a couple of courses, knife classes at a culinary school in Toronto, and I just really like the act of chopping my food. So I'll get these all chopped up. These are gonna go into some hand pies, some beef hand pies, and the recipe calls for putting the potatoes and raw onion into the skillet at the same time, but I am going to use those chopped up frozen onions that we made the other day. This is a perfect time to add those, and because the cells of those onions have already they've already broken down because they were in the freezer and they've dehydrated, and those cells have burst open in the freezing and defrosting process. They won't take as long to cook as these potatoes. So I will wait and put them in after the potatoes have had a little bit of time sauteing, or steaming actually. The recipe asks us to steam these in a little bit of water, but I happen to have some homemade chicken broth that needs to be used up. It's been opened, so it needs to be used up. So I will be adding that to the potatoes to help them steam and cook. And then these are the red onions, and you don't have to flash freeze them because I froze them flat, and you can see they're just breaking up really easily. I can get whatever chunks I want out of here. These are the chopped red peppers that we put in the freezer the other day. Again, this is another great opportunity to use them, and they don't need to be flash frozen either because they break up real easy as well. So this recipe doesn't call for mushrooms, but I think the taste of mushrooms would be delicious in here. In a meat pie, a hand pie, you don't have a lot of room actually in the pie, so it's easy to overstuff them, and you've got to be careful. So I think this would actually be a perfect opportunity to use dehydrated powdered mushroom. It would help thicken the gravy we're going to make. It would add an umami flavor. It'd be wonderful, but I need to make more. I don't have any, so we won't be using that today, but it would be good. This here is just some dehydrated kale, chives, and celery that I dehydrated, mixed together. I think it makes a nice blend. I'll add that to the beef once it's cooked. And this is dehydrated tomato, I don't know, tomato product. It's the skins, seeds, everything that came out of the tomatoes before I made the sauce. And one of the reasons you use this is to make tomato paste. You add water to this and it makes a paste. Or in this kind of application where you want the flavor of tomato but not necessarily the juices of a tomato, this is also really helpful here. Okay, so while those potatoes get softening up over there in that chicken stock, I've taken my pie crust out of the fridge. I've just unwrapped it, and we are going to roll it out.
Okay, the next thing we're going to make is a tomato galette. I have some puff pastry, or some phyllo pastry here. It's a little ragged looking, which is fine, so I'm just going to sort of glue it together with this melted butter. My preferred method of adding butter to phyllo pastry is in a little spritzer bottle. I melt the butter and then I pour it into a spritzer bottle and I just sort of spray it all over the pastry, and it just covers really nicely. But here you see I've got some pesto, frozen pesto from the garden earlier in the summer. I add some ricotta cheese. I'm going to mix that all up, and it's going to be the base layer for our galette. On top of that, I'm going to put some sliced tomatoes from the garden. You're going to see I'm going to toss some little pieces over my shoulder to my chicken, who's actually a border collie named Charlie. And when I go to lay these tomatoes out, I'm going to start with the bigger slices and just sort of stagger them. And then I'll come back along top over the staggered tomatoes and I'll fill in any little gaps with the little tomato pieces. And then I'm going to start to roll up the pastry on the sides. Oh, pepper, some salt, and then some seasoning salt. Now I'll roll up the pastry. Just loosely. I'm not tucking this in tightly. I'm just making edges so it doesn't all fall out. Thankfully, I do have eggs at this point to make an egg wash. It makes it turn out absolutely beautifully browned. It would have been good to have the egg wash on my beef pies earlier, but I didn't have eggs that day. And then I'm going to go get some basil from the garden, and I'm just going to tear it right up into the galette and top the galette with a little bit of fresh basil before I bake it. And here it is out of the oven. It looks absolutely phenomenal, and we get to taste it, and it was amazing. That tomato galette was for lunch for my mom and I one day, and it was breakfast for the two of us the next day, and it was so good and so easy to make, and I loved it. So the next recipe we're going to look at is fire cider vinegar. So controversial, I know. I've been making it for at least 8 years. This is what it looks like about a month after. I have 2 jars this size, and I would say it's almost ready for me to strain and add honey to, but it's not quite cold season here yet, cold and flu. I did offer it to a friend and she turned it down. Anyway, let's get into it. I have a lot of fun making this every year. The ingredients can vary depending on what you like or don't like. And then you strain it or don't strain it, add honey, don't add honey. I will be adding honey so that people in my family will also drink it. But here we go. Enjoy.
Today we are making fire cider vinegar. It is something that I started taking several years ago. As winter starts, I take a tablespoon every day and just hope that all the immune boosting goodies in here help me not get a cold. And I don't know, it certainly seems to work. So I make it and I take it. And this is what I do. I take a clean glass jar that has a spigot on it, and I fill it with the following goodies. Hot peppers, whatever kinds you want. I like jalapenos, onion, a couple of clementines or mandarins, a lemon, raw ginger. So this ginger hasn't been, is it irritated? So I could actually plant this ginger if I wanted to. Some turmeric, horseradish, garlic, lime, and whatever herbs I got growing in the garden that I feel will add some good nutrition and taste. So that's rosemary and mint I've got. And I will let this, oh, and apple cider vinegar. I'll top this off with apple cider vinegar. Once this sits for about a month, I will strain most of this out. I'll probably leave the citrus in, and then I will sweeten it with either raw honey or maple syrup, so that the people who also want to have some of this in their life will eat it, hopefully. Here we go.
Okay, so that is the fire cider vinegar. You know, you make it and you hope you never have to use it, but if you do have to use it, you hope it works. And then you don't have to take it again because it does taste awful. But I think it works. I wouldn't keep taking it if I didn't. So the last thing we're going to talk about in this episode are preserved lemons, and I've been making them for about 4 or 5 years, I think. I always have a jar in my fridge. Sometimes I even have 3 jars based on what flavors I've got. You can make them spicy, you can make them savory, you can make them warm, you can make them all sorts of things. I'm going to make, I think, 3 different versions in this episode, and I will give them away as gifts. I will sell them at a craft fair soon, and I just found these really pretty jars that I want to put them in, so come along with me, and here we go.
Okay, so I am going to be making preserved lemons, which traditionally don't get chopped all the way through. They just get chopped to 3/4 of the length. The tips and tails get trimmed. I will save these and dehydrate them. Yum. But traditionally they get cut 3/4 of the way through like that. They get opened, salt gets put in there, and they get put into a jar. I'm giving these away as gifts, and so that won't work because this won't fit in there. So I will cut these right down, and I'm actually going to cut them into 8ths instead of quarters. Each of my jars has either just plain salt in it, or salt and cardamom, salt and cloves, or salt and rosemary. And I will just stuff these in until there is no more room. Actually, that's not true. I will be adding salt as I go along. This is a lactoferment. The salt is what is preserving the lemon. Of course, the acid in the lemon is helping. but it is an active ferment, and therefore when it's sitting on the counter waiting to become a fermented or preserved lemon, you should check the pressure in the jar because it could be producing pressure as it ferments. So at this point I will add salt. This is kosher salt. You don't want to use table salt. Table salt usually has iodine in it, which could prevent the fermentation process from occurring. So there's lots more room in here for more lemons, and we'll keep going. Mason top makes this handy little tool. Pop it in there, press your product down. Oh, that's such a satisfying activity. I am not worried about these lemon seeds. They will be really easy to remove once you're going to use the product, use the lemons. So I am happy just leaving them in there for now. Time for more salt. If you're going to use these in a savory dish, I haven't found any reason to rinse the salt off when I'm using them. But if you're going to use them in a sweet preparation, I would rinse the salt off just before you're going to go use them. I think we've got room for more. Other ingredients you can add to your fermented preserved lemons would be spicy peppers. If you're going to use it in a like a Mexican dish, that would be delicious. I think I want to give these out at Thanksgiving. It's now the beginning of September, so that'll be the right amount of time to wait for them to become nice and preserved, so that when my friends get them, they are ready to be used. You can see that lovely lemon juice coming to the top when I do that, which is wonderful. Woo, that's full. All right, more salt. And these ones are done. I'll just keep going.
Okay, I will just keep continuing to fill these jars with lemons and salt and lemons and salt. There is a minimum ratio, but I go way over that with salt to preserve them. The wooden tool I'm using is from Mason Tops. It's called a pickle packer, I believe. It's meant for fermented foods, and it fits perfectly inside these regular mouth mason jars. I did want to take a second and tell you that the flavors I used were cardamom, rosemary, and clove, and all of those would be really good in some Indian food. If you're going to make some biryani, they'd be great. There's lots of options. And these are preserved lemons I've had in my fridge for a few years. I have peppercorns, brown mustard, and yellow mustard, and I think red pepper flakes in here. I'm just going to take one out and show you how it dissolves really easily. You can just put these on potatoes or in rice or on fish, in chicken. It's just absolutely delicious, and they dissolve down into nothing. So don't worry about having a chunk of lemon in your mouth. And they're great. Here I'm dehydrating the lime, the mandarin oranges or clementines, and the lemon tips and tops. I'm going to dehydrate them on I think 110 degrees for 48 hours. It does take the full 48 hours. I want to dehydrate them very low so that the bright color is retained. The lower heat, the brighter the end product. So that's always a goal when you're working with citrus. A few layers in there. And then once they're fully dehydrated, I'm going to put them into my food processor, blend them up, make them into a powder, and I will store them like that. And that's a wrap on episode 4. I can't believe it. I have so much content that I want to share with you guys. I'm thinking maybe I should be producing these every couple days, every few days. I'm not sure. I've pulled content for episode 4 from the end of August, and here we are. Today's September 28th. Happy birthday, Mom. And I have like a whole month of content still to share with you. So maybe these will come out more often. Who would have thought? I certainly didn't, but I am so glad to share this journey with you. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying this. I love the comments you're sending me and the feedback I'm getting. It's really great to share these passions and this creativity with you here on YouTube. I really am glad that you come along with me and share this journey. Here are a few things that have made me smile this week. I hope you enjoy. Bye.